Rest in peace to The Weeknd. Let's start off this video with a moment of silence. If you haven't heard already, The Weeknd announced that Hurry Up Tomorrow would be their final album, and that album came out last week, presuming the death of The Weeknd. I'm sure Abel will go on to do more stuff in the future. However, I'm going to miss The Weeknd project. If you've watched his channel for any time at all, you know that The Weeknd is one of my favorite, if not my favorite artists of all time. So it only felt right that for the final album, we would do a tutorial on it. I would show you kind of how to produce a song in the style of Hurry Up Tomorrow, and then also just put my own spin on it. I figured a cool angle would be, you know, what would it be like if I produced one of the songs for Hurry Up Tomorrow for The Weeknd with Mike Dean and One O Tricks Point Never and Max Martin? Let's put myself in those shoes. So in this video today, we're going to go over a full production in that style. But if you like this video, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. We do videos like this every single Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. And if you want to be entered to win a free pack from MakePopMusic.com, sample pack, preset pack, MIDI pack, all you have to do is leave a comment down below before the first Monday of this video. The videos come out on Friday. You have until that Monday to comment literally anything you want, and we pick a winner at random on our Instagram, Make Pop Music. So go check all that out. Let's dive in because we have a ton to cover. The first thing that I wanted to do to kind of just tie in some kind of melody is start with a little ARP, and I'm playing it on this little Jupiter brass that we have out here out of Analog Pro. I'm going to be using a lot of Serum and a lot of Arturia because Mike Dean produced most of this album. Has so many analog synths. I only have a few here, and they're really hard to show on tutorials, so I figured I would keep it all software. So for right now, we're going to start off with this Jupiter brass, and then I just have this really simple pattern playing. It's already feeling 80s. We're kind of keeping that 80s vibe going through Hurry Up Tomorrow. But one really important thing about not just this album, but really all of The Weeknd's albums, is that they are so dynamic. So on pretty much every track that I'm going to show you today, whether it's synths, drums, vocals, there is a ton of automation happening because as, you know, if you're a Langelo or you're Mike Dean or you're Max Martin, as you're sitting there playing hardware synths, you're turning knobs, you're fucking with things, you're making things feel super unique and dynamic. So that's exactly what we're doing with this. That's why I like using a lot of the Arturia stuff, is they have macros built in. So I'm automating brightness, I'm automating timbre, I'm automating time, I'm driving up the chorus and the delay as we keep going. And as you can see, it kind of really starts to open up. And that's how you can get those little plucks like this to really open up. Brightness is going to start rising. And using things like filter automation, reverb and delay automation, adding things like modulation, that just does a lot to take what could be a pretty generic, boring sound and make it feel a lot more 3D and a lot more exciting. So that's kind of the main melody that we have playing throughout the intro. And then I basically just wanted to tie in a pretty kind of typical Weeknd style 80s, you know, massive resonant synth bass. So here's what we have for that. This is actually something that I just made myself in Serum. So really simple patch. I'll show you exactly how to make it. So I have a sub doing direct out, and envelope 2 just has a nice long, like 4.5 second ramp. And that's actually just making that sub kind of fade out. Everything else stays really consistent. And then we have basically this kind of messed up triangle wave and then a saw wave. 5 on the unison for both. We're detuning this, making this super wide. And then we have this filter. This is the Moog Low 12 with a pretty high resonant. And envelope 2 is also hitting that. So as this hits, it'll kind of give you that big almost like an acid bass, but much more open, much more brassy. So here's what it sounds like with just the sub. Here's with envelope A or oscillator A, and then adding oscillator B. It's buzzy, it's wide, it's aggressive, and then we're adding a little bit of distortion and a bit of reverb, and adding that just with that main little synth that we have. Let's get the synth back in there. So we've kind of written our chord progression. We're just in a minor key, pretty typical for the Weeknd. I think we ended up in like E flat minor, D sharp minor, whatever you want to call it. And then at some point we will switch this to a harmonic minor just for like a bar or two. I'll show you what that sounds like when we add vocals later. But now that we have kind of the main melody, the main kind of returning motif, I just wanted to add some atmosphere. So this is where you start adding things like little pads, little drones. I'm using the dark drone out of Analog Pro as well. If we go to here, it looks like this patch is just out of the augmented strings. So it's not even one of the analog style keyboards. But again, we're going to be automating some of these parameters down here. And we have some Transit 2 on it just to really distort this pad, make it pretty crazy. Without Transit 2, straight out of Arturia. So this is essentially just adding a little bit of chorus, a little bit of tremolo, just kind of making it a little bit more textured. But we have that tucked so low in here, it's really just to kind of drive the melody. And I'm almost treating it like a violin since we are in augmented strings, and I'm just using it to add a counter melody on the back. I think counter melody is so big in a lot of these Weeknd tracks. They feel so full, they feel so dynamic, and they feel so dense in terms of like chords and notes, and a lot of that happens with counter melody. Let's go to this tune-up pad that we have right here. I'll kind of show you what it sounds like straight out of, I think again, Analog Lab. We're using the CS80 pad, and for this one, we are in the CS80. So this is a kind of retro synth. This is something that you would probably see in Mike Dean's studio. It's got a bunch of these like really cool filters, and it just has this really nice, typical like synth pad, synth string, almost similar to like a more modern Selena. So that's what we're doing for this. Here's what the actual settings look like, but it's basically just the CS80 pad with a little bit of filtering and then automation like we talked about before. So it sounds like this. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to do something really fun, and basically After Hours, Dawn FM, and the new album, there's a lot of these like little pitch ramps. So what I did was I actually extended the first chord on here to a half bar before, and I have this pitch right here at -7 semitones, and it's going to automate all the way up. -7 semitones is basically a fifth down, so it still falls in scale. It sounds really, really exciting. Let me show you what it sounds like. It almost reminds me of like the Dolby Startup sound. Huge for the 80s, huge for the Weeknd. And then we're just kind of vibing it out with a little bit of Juno chorus. This one is the one from Arturia. I have the one from Roland, but it's a little bit finicky. I kind of like this one better. So let's hear this. And that little ramp up just really adds so much texture. Now after that, let's see what else we've got. I'm pulling in this extra little bass down here. I just feel like it would be cool to have a little bit of more analog texture. So we're using something like a Mini Moog. This is the Mini 5. This is just a pretty standard bass synth. I actually have a Subsequent 37 over there that I was going to use, but then figuring out how to film that would be annoying. So I just wanted everything to be software so you guys could copy this. But we're just kind of doing the same thing as that little reso bass earlier. And we're filtering out the lows. It's just adding a little bit more texture. It's adding a little bit more kind of analog vibe. And then other than that, that's pretty much it for the intro before vocals. The other things that we start to add right here are as the intro really starts to ramp up. I wanted to build this out over a really long time, similar to some of the more ambient Weeknd tracks. We've done a lot of the poppy stuff on this channel. I haven't done a lot of the super ambient sound design specific, you know, really crazy shit in there. So for this, we're using a preset called Ice Cave. I believe this is out of our pack Lush. It's basically just a little vocal. Something that you'd hear in something like a CMI, another classic synth that you might want to look up. But we're just using that to basically play extra chords. We're just using a little bit of Pro Q to kind of do some mid-side stuff, get it out of the way for when vocals come in. That's not super, super important. But mixing that with everything, we're really starting to get a wide synth bed. Then the only other thing that we add over here is the little ARP that's just basically a higher version of what we already have. This is just using the jump preset. I'm pretty sure that this is out of... Which one is this out of? There's a couple in here. Yeah, the OPXA. So basically like an Oberheim. Super great poly synth. Basically just poly sawtooth waves. Super typical for the 80s. Doing a lot of automation on this one as well. And it's just doing that little bump, 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 bump. And it's going to open up as we go. That filter movement, so important. I cannot overstate it enough. And then let's go ahead and look at this. I wanted to do something super Mike Deany, so I basically just had this really long kind of legato funky lead. This is out of the... This is actually a combo, so it's out of the Arps 2600 and the Mini. So let's hear this. And this is important because what I'm doing is I'm basically not quantizing anything. I am doing some pitch bend stuff. So if we go here, you can see that there's a big pitch dive. And I'm just using this kind of to start as a lead and then transition into a pad. So it starts off dry with just kind of some auto panning happening. And then I'm just filtering in this spaced out because as we go into the next part, this is essentially acting as a little ambient pad just to transition things. And then I added kickstart to those basses to start to swell up because this is where we start to add some stuff. This is where we start to like really make it feel like we're going somewhere new. So I just have a little kick coming in, little 4 on the floor. This is out of our pack The Works. I'm just using the retro pop thump. Filtering it up. And then we just have a little hard cut right there. We're just using that to kind of drive it. And since we were doing that little 4 on the floor, I wanted the bass to kind of swell with it. We also have, you know, some risers and hits coming. Nothing too wild. Those will go into what I can only presume I'm going to call the verse for this. I also wanted some kind of little background pad. There's a lot of these little background pad elements happening that are tucked pretty low in the mix. This is from the SQ80. As you can see, so much emphasis on synths from the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. That is huge. This one sounds like this in solo. Really subtle. When I play under, and one thing that's really cool is you can kind of hear how that little lead that I'm calling the mic lead really transitions down and almost acts as its own transitional element. Then we're going into something new here. Before we do that, I did want to kind of start to introduce what will be the bassline motif. So we have this little layer right here. This one is just out of the Mini as well. Preset called Spindle, and I'm just doing some automation on it, but I also added good friend of the channel, Infiltrator. So here's what it sounds like without Infiltrator. I wanted some of that modular synth patching craziness, so I added this V4R preset, and I'm automating the mix up right here. And it acts as this cool little glitchy riser. It sounds crazy. Let me show you what all of these sound like. We're kind of just using this as a little bridge to transition. All right, let's go into what I'm gonna call verse. Let's get the drums all in here, show you what we got rocking. So for kick and snare, I wanted something that was super simple, super 80s. I took these out of the works, the retro pop kick and the retro splat snare. And this one's just tuned down one semitone, same thing with the kick. And I'm doing a really simple. I do have a little bit of reverb on the snare because the actual sample is super dry. Can't really hear it, you can just kind of feel it in the mix. And then for hats, I just found this little hi-hat loop that I kind of, in Cubase, since we're kind of swinging things right here, I'll just open this up and then you can pop in like a 16th note triplet, or you can put the swing at like 66%, which is what I did. And then basically it'll auto quantize it to that. So it took a pretty straight hi-hat loop. And then I just have this little perk loop. And same thing with that one, just kind of took it into this, drug the swing at 66%, and then let it kind of have its own little natural pocket. Because otherwise it was pretty straightforward. The main thing for this whole section is actually this bass line right here. So I have two layers. I have a little sub. The sub is just out of Serum. It's the Perfect Subs preset out of the Works. So if you check out the Works on our website, there's a sample pack, there's a Serum preset pack, and then there's a bundle to get both. This is out of the Serum preset pack, or if you get it as a bundle. And it's just a super, super clean sub. And I do have it sidechained to the kick a little bit, just so we don't have low-end overload. So I'm just using kickstart. And then I have the kick right here, basically triggering it. And then I'm layering that. This is really where all the sauce comes from. This is from Trillion. It's a rough sync bass. So I just wanted something kind of similar to like the Open Hearts bass mixed with some of the stuff we heard on Don FM. So this rough sync works so well. Just took out all the low end, took out some of the mids. I've spaced out here. It's actually a little bit wet for my taste, so I'm going to drag this back just a hair. And then we're just pulling in that little bass stab. Let's move on to the synths, because there's some stuff to cover here. I'm going to close out some of this automation. It's really hard to look at. You get the point. Pretty much automate everything in this. So we have that background pad from earlier. I believe it was the CS80, or no, SQ80. Just kind of doing the melody. Tucked super low in there. You wouldn't even really know it's there, but If it's missing, you kind of miss it. And then we have this layer just to kind of supplement the bass line. This is just using a Juno 6. Just EQing out some of the low end that we don't really need. And then this is really where we start to kind of get chords, is this CZ brass right here. This synth right here, crazy for brass. This is the CZ5 year brass. I mean, this thing sounds so sick. It's got like that perfect detune. It sounds super brassy. We're going to automate the brightness and the time a bit, but I love the movement that that has. And then we're mixing that with just this little vocal pad. This is out of Serum as well. This is just a preset called the Mellow Vibes. This is from Poptopia. And it's essentially just like a Mellotron vocal. Got it moving with kickstart. Putting that with the drums and the bass. And then for the second half, we're pulling in some extra big pads. We have that tune-up pad kind of doing something similar to earlier, but just with a slightly different preset. We just have the ambient down pad. This is out of the CZ, so again, kind of wild. But I'm doing that same thing with Transit, where I basically have it start 7 semitones down and then automate up. It's kind of a mix between this CZ brass and then the pad that we had in the little intro. And then we're just layering it with one big bright brass, again, out of the CZ. This thing is killer. And we're playing it with some counter melody. And when you play them all together, there's quite a bit of movement. Add in the kick and the bass that we have. Then we've just got some swells and hits because we're going into something a little bit different back here. Really important whenever you're transitioning, if you want to kind of carry weight and attention, rises and hits are the best way to do it. All of these are from Sweet Tooth. It's maybe my favorite pack we've ever done. Instant ear candy, basically. Into some big exhaust, down hits, filter sweeps, whatever you want to call them. So what we're doing now is we're going to go into something that feels familiar. We're going to go into these bass pads again, and we're going back to essentially what we had for the intro. I figured when I was fleshing all of this out, it would be cool to do something that was a little bit different structure-wise than kind of your simple verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. And so for this, I really just experimented and let myself kind of do whatever. And that's kind of what I ended up on, was going from super ambient intro that feels like an intro to something that feels like an upbeat verse. And then the ambient stuff comes back and you're like, maybe that intro was actually like the hook. And then I'm recycling the first thing that you're going to hear as the bridge. It'll make sense once I play it all, but just know that like for this style, you do not have to be super chronological. You can kind of put anything wherever you want. For the drums for this, I actually wanted to pull in something. So we're swapping the kick right here. We're going to the Pop Retro Rooms kick. Again, out of the works. This is not even trying to plug that pack. It's just so good for this style. And then I'm just layering snares on basically the, I think it's the 4. Let's hear. It's on the second 4. So I have this snare out of the works. It's just a really big ass like 80 snare. Tons of reverb that I put on it. Then I have this tonal snare out of Dark Pop, which is like one of our OG packs. Sounds like this. And then to add a little bit of noise, I just have an exhaust. Just kind of acting as like white noise. And when you play that with that bass and the synths that we're gonna add, it feels like ridiculously cinematic. Let me show you. So for the synths on this, I did want to change it a little bit so we didn't have the exact same thing. We have the tune-up pad, we have the Atmos pad, we have the vocals. That sounds like this. But to kind of make this feel a little bit different, I wanted to do essentially different lead synths. So what I did was I found two different kind of analog keys. I found the CMI, which is this really old computer synth, and there was this really cool pad called Addictive Pad that feels like an ARP. So I panned that to the right, and then to layer that, I took the ARP 2600, and I panned this one to the left under this preset New Vision. And I'm letting them kind of feel random with their movement on each side. And when you layer all of those with the bass, with the hits, and with the kicks, all right, let's talk about this part. We're changing up the chord progression just a little bit. Same exact bass patches, so just that reso bass from Serum and then that bass from the Mini, but we're changing the chords. So here we're gonna go B to A sharp to E flat to C flat, or I'm sorry, D flat. So here we go. I have that background pad from earlier, just pedaling on the E flat, and then I've got the Arps following the new chord progression. And to really take this part over the edge, I added this little synclavier lead. I wanted to do one last little Mike Dean apeshit synth solo, so I have the classic octave solo preset. And here I'm going to be doing a lot of movement with the pitch bend and a lot of movement with the modulation. So you can see the pitch bend right here. We're using this to really play between notes, and then the modulation I'm using just to add a little bit of flavor. So here's what this sounds like in solo. And when you tuck it in, it sounds nuts. So again, none of that's really quantized, just played it how I wanted it. And then let's go over the outro right here, and then we'll go over all of the vocals together. So for this outro, I wanted to do something that kind of felt like a Weeknd transitional moment. So we're doing that. We have this transit too. And what I'm going to be doing is automating this warp right here. So you'll hear it, It's going to turn on and then it'll warp, so it'll start to slow itself down. And then just a classic fade out. Just felt really cool to kind of have something unique in there. And that covers most of the, actually that covers all of the synths, basses, drums. Just a lot of analog sounding synths with a lot of movement and character. Let's start talking about the vocals because we still have quite a bit to cover under these. So for the vocal chain, it was my usual Sony C800 into the Rupert Neve Designs Newton channel strip, into the AudioScape 1176, Rev D, and then into the AudioScape Opto compressor. And here's what the vocals sound like with nothing on them. We'll go over this intro vocal first. I can feel it fading into ashes, now I'm kneeling. So we're going to start with auto-tune. Again, just kind of doing what it does. This is where things get a little bit interesting in terms of like the key. So right here we're in E flat minor, but there's a part back here, let me show you, where I actually had to automate between E flat minor and E flat harmonic minor. So over here, let me show you. Running from my past, I can't conceal it. I can't conceal it. If I didn't swap to harmonic minor there, that little would be out of key. I can't conceal it. And with the synths, it just sounds so sick. I can't conceal it. I can't feel it. It just adds a bit of like darkness, but you can automate auto-tune to kind of swap between keys. So I'm just swapping between minor for like 90% of the song and then harmonic minor on that one little area. Next is just a bit of EQ compression. I'm using the R compressor just to kind of give me a little bit more because I have some hardware stuff happening. And then we're actually sculpting quite a bit of this because it's acting as a little background vocal. But this harmonizer is really where we start to kind of get that Weeknd-y feel with like the width. I can't conceal it. I can feel it. Fading into ashes, now I'm kneeling. So this is just a vocal doubler. We have it on a 35% mix. And then we have an Echo Boy doing an eighth note on a space echo. And then we have an Echo Boy doing a quarter note on an Echo Plex. And both of these are automated, so they'll kind of do throws at the end of words. I can feel it. Fading into ashes, now I'm kneeling. Praying for repentance, making deals end. Running from I want things to be super wet, super ambient. I'm adding Seventh Heaven on a basically 50-50 dry wet at like 3.5 seconds whole. I can feel it fading into ashes, now I'm kneeling. And then just a couple extra pro cues just for volume control, and then just to kind of tame it in the mix. I didn't want this to be super like forward, so I'm kind of just doing some band passing stuff. I can feel it fading into ashes, now I'm kneeling. Look at all the automation. Change it. Had to do some weekend runs in here. This one felt super good. So it's super spacey, super ambient, but right here we're gonna start to filter this out and it's almost gonna become a background pad. I can't conceal it. I can't feel it. Fading into ashes, now I'm kneeling. And the reason that we're doing that is because I have a lead vocal coming in. So for the lead vocal, we're actually using more of like the synths and the effects tracks on this, but otherwise it's pretty much the same auto-tune and then a little bit of EQ and compression. Here's what it sounds like completely dry. I swear I'd die for you. And now it's time to prove these holy words. So let's look at all the wet effects because this is where things get intense. So For the Weeknd sound, I feel like it sounds really wet, but one of the key things is like a lot of eighth note delay instead of quarter note delay, and a little bit less reverb than you would think. So we're doing the eighth note on a space echo. This is just on the send, doing a little bit of filtering. This automatically helps so much. I swear I'd love you, and now it's time to prove. We do have a quarter note, but the feedback can come down a little bit, and we're just doing a ping pong. So 1/4 on one side, 1/4 on the other. They'll go back and forth. We're using the tube tape for this, and then I just filter this out. So we don't have an excess buildup of like low mid information or sibilant top end information. We don't really need that. It's just for vibes. And then for the main reverb, we're using this plate out of Seventh Heaven. This is a vocal plate B at 2.65 seconds. These are pretty long reverbs on this. However, this one's not super, super high in the mix. So we're doing a bit of EQ. We're also doing a little bit of ducking on here. And then we have the pre-delay happening. So here's what it sounds like. It's time to prove these holy words are bound to. It sounds wild, but in the mix, it makes a lot of sense. We also have our kind of tried and true widening right here with a Roland Dimension D on setting 3. This is just to add that width and texture. I swear I'd love you. And then the last thing that we have is this room reverb. I've noticed that the Weeknd uses a lot of like short room reverbs. This is at basically a half second, and this one's a bit higher in the mix. So here's what it sounds like. It's almost acting as like a slapback. I swear I'd love you, and now it's time to prove these holy words I'm bound to. I'll see the. And then we're actually just using a little bit of track spacer to side chain all of these different wet effects to the lead just so it doesn't get super muddy. And then just doing a little bit of EQ. All of the basically effects will return to this vocal effects bus. I've talked about this before. And it essentially just lets me process all of those together if I want to get them out of the way of the dry lead. So other than that, I think we can still pull this quarter note down a little bit. And then let's hear what this vocal sounds like. I swear I'd love you, and now it's time to prove these holy words I'm bound to. I'll see the ground soon, so lay me down. That's where we go into our little transition. Now let's go to the main lead for the verse. It's essentially the same thing. I'm just using a lot less of each of the wet effects. So I'm not using nearly as much reverb, not using nearly as much delay. It's a bit drier. Me open, bleed me dry, you kill my pain and leave me broken. Cross my heart and hope to die for what I've chosen. Without any of the wet effects. Me open, bleed me dry, you kill my pain and leave me broken. Cross my heart and hope to. The only one that I do want to show you, this is the only new effect. The rest is just kind of a balance thing, but we have an echo chorus. This is the Stellar Echo from Slate Digital. This thing is really good. It's basically on my template now for any space echo needs, and I just have it on the Stellar preset, and it's basically just doing a little bit of that classic space echo vibe. Kind of rounding out the vocal, making it feel a little bit more 80s. And when we listen to it in the mix, the vocal sounds kind of wet on its own, but in such a big, dense, spacey mix, the vocal's cutting through just fine. Cut me open, bleed me dry, you kill my pain and leave me broken. Cross my heart and hope to die for what I've chosen. What's a life I built on promises you broken? Oh shit, you broken, yeah. Oh, surprise, surprise, you let me down. Alright, for this B section right here, we have left and right dubs. I just triple tracked everything. Once for the middle, once for the left, once for the right. Surprise, surprise, you let me down. Lungs are burning from the run around. Just vocal-lined all of those together. Shout out vocal-line, saving me tons of time and energy. And then we just have these ad-libs right here. So these just happen as like call and response. And essentially I'm just doing the lead vocal just filtered out and way wetter. You'll hear it right here.
You let me down, you let me. Don't run around the run around my neck.
Super wet. So I just have all of those kind of acting as ad-libs.
Surprise, surprise, you let me down. Lungs are burning from around. Love is like a noose around my neck. It got me high and then it kicked up the legs. I swear I'd die for you. And now it's time.
This is what I was talking about when I said that the structure would start to make sense. So I'm taking this section back here.
I swear I'd die for you.
And I pop the drums on it, and I'm adding the left and the right dub so the vocals feel a little bit more hooky.
And now it's time to prove
With a lead.
these holy words I'm bound to. I'll see the ground soon, so lay me down.
So it essentially acts as like, oh shit, what I heard earlier, that's actually kind of the hook of the song. It's the only thing that really gets repeated. We have it coming here. It keeps that vibe of having like super upbeat to super ambient, but having the drums I feel like makes the arrangement not start to like drag ass, and it doesn't feel like a copy pasted the first one, especially with us taking out that main synth ARP from the first version of this and having the new like CS80 and ARP 2600, or not CS80, what was it? The CMI. That was what it was. Just feels kind of new, but it feels familiar to the listener.
Kicked up the legs. I swear I'd die for you. And now it's time to prove these holy words I'm bound to. I'll see the ground soon, so lay me down.
And then again, when I said that this structure would start to make sense, we're taking this kind of intro vocal back here. The I can feel it right here.
I can feel it.
We're keeping that coming over here, but we're changing that chord progression to go from the, what is it? I think that we do, what do we do right here? We do the, oh yeah, B to A sharp. Yeah, so we're just changing that. With that vocal, it makes it sound new. Since this production has gotten a lot bigger, I wanted to layer up that vocal, so I actually sang it one more time and added doubler by Waves. This is one of my favorite things for making a vocal sound wide and lush and chorusy. And then I'm adding a 4-second reverb straight onto this. I'm not using any of the synths or wet effects. And then the only other thing is I am format shifting this down in Auto-Tune to 115. I also sang it lower. So like without the format, here's what it sounds like.
I can feel it fading into ashes, and I want kneeling.
With the format.
Praying for repentance, making music. Running from my past, I can't conceal it. I can't conceal it. I can feel it.
All right. So layering that over the first version of the vocal that we had.
I can feel it fading into ashes. Now I'm kneeling, praying for repentance, making music. Running from my past, I can't conceal it. I can't conceal it.
Now let's hear it with all the synths. And then that's where we just go into this little outro. doing that transit warp down. And that's it. That's everything that I did for this song. So now I'm going to shut the hell up and I'm going to let you hear it from start to finish. Here we go. This is my take on if I got asked by The Weeknd to do a song for Hurry Up Tomorrow. This is what I'm sending.
I can feel it fading into ashes. Now I'm in praying for repentance, making it end. Running from my past, I can't conceal it. I can't conceal it. I can feel it fading into ashes. Now I'm in praying for repentance, making it end. Running from my past, I can't conceal it. I can't conceal it. I swear I'd die for you, and now it's time to prove these holy words I'm bound to. I'll see the ground soon, so lay me down. Cut me open, bleed me dry, you kill my pain and leave me broken. Cross my heart and hope to die for what I've chosen. What's a life I built on promises you're broken? I'm sure you're broken. Oh, surprise, surprise, you let me down. Lungs are burning from the runaround. Love is like a noose around my neck. It got me high and then it kicked up the legs. I swear I'd die for you, and now it's time to prove these holy words I'm bound to. I'll see the ground soon, so lay me down. I can feel it fading into ashes. Now I'm kneeling, praying for repentance, making it end. Running from the past, I can't conceal it. I can't conceal it. I can feel it fading into ashes. Now I'm kneeling, praying for repentance, making it end. Running from the past, I can't conceal it. I can't conceal it.
And there you have it. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. This is one of my favorite sound-alikes that we've ever done. Also, if you want to help me out, send this to The Weeknd. Send it to Mike Dean. Send it to Max Martin, even though that man is basically a ghost. You know what? Actually, don't. It's too late. The Weeknd's dead. Can't produce for him anyway. So maybe we'll see Abel's next project. But other than that, I hope you like this. I'm super happy with how it came out. Again, if you leave a comment down below before the first Monday of this video, we pick one comment at random. You can win a sample pack, preset pack, or a MIDI pack from our website. So in this video, the ones that we used were primarily like The Works, Poptopia, and Lush were like the main ones. So if you want any of those, just leave a comment. We're going to pick a winner at random on our Instagram, Make Pop Music. Other than that, let us know what videos you want to see in the near future. We always listen to your requests, but I'll see you guys next week with another video. This one was so fun. Much love. Peace.